Call an ambulance. Hurry up, you moron. My husband, who always rubbed me the wrong way, collapsed on the floor in a greasy sweat. The paramedics arrived immediately. They quickly checked my husband's condition and put him on a stretcher. Then they said to me, "Are you his wife, aren't you? Could you come with us to the hospital?" My husband was put on the stretcher and looked at me with clinging eyes. I looked him right in the eye. "No, I will not." I said that firmly with no hesitation. "What?" My husband's voice came out as if he had lost his mind. "This man is a stranger, so I am not coming." "What?" "Please, take care of the rest." "Wait, Lydia! Wait!" I then confronted my husband with something I had been carrying in my pocket for the past few days. The moment he saw it, his face turned even paler. "How dare you treat me like a slave all these years? This is my revenge. I will never forgive you." My name is Lydia. I'm a 36-year-old housewife. I live in a rented apartment with my husband Caleb. I was introduced to Caleb by a colleague at work when I was still working as a full-time employee. My colleague had a lot of friends, and I was often invited to parties. I am more of an introvert and I like to watch movies or cook by myself. I was not comfortable with large group activities, so I kept turning them down. One time, a colleague invited me to come to a barbecue with his friends. At first, I refused as usual, but my colleague insisted and I ended up participating. On the day of the barbecue, there were just so many people there. One of them was Caleb, who later became my husband. I was having a drink at a little distance from the group of people who were having a good time. Then, a colleague of mine came with Caleb. According to my colleague, he wanted to let us meet each other for the simple reason that we seemed to have similar interests. I was surprised at the suddenness, but Caleb started talking to me. He was nicely tanned and was clearly an outdoorsy type. When I actually talked to him, I found him to be sociable and humorous. I had thought that Caleb and I, who prefer to be alone and are indoor people, would not get along. But as we talked, we found out that we had common interests, just as my colleague had said, and we hit it off right away. We exchanged contact information on the spot, and we even made plans to meet up on our next day off. We went out for dinner and shopping several times, and we ended up dating. After several years of dating, Caleb proposed to me and we got married. Caleb had always been kind to me, even before we started dating. He was the ideal man to take me out of my indoor lifestyle. That didn't change after we got married. But over the past few years, he started to do and say things that made me feel a little uncomfortable. I quit my job and became a housewife because Caleb himself wanted me to. However, he often makes sarcastic remarks about it. For example, when I got sick and was late cooking dinner, "I'm home, Lydia." "Hey, why my dinner isn't ready yet?" "Hi, sorry, I was sick today. I had a rest earlier and I couldn't get up. Can you go take a bath first?" "Huh? What's that? You are a housewife. You should at least take care of the meal." Caleb never worried about my health, which made me very sad. Another time, "Hey, Caleb, there is a reunion coming up in my hometown. I'll finish my chores. So, Can I go?
Suit yourself. Well, being a stay-at-home wife is great, you know.
I envy you, Lydia.
You get to play around with the money your husband makes.
He's usually so nice to me, carrying my purse and bringing me flowers after work. But sometimes he acts like a jerk. I even thought that maybe he wanted me to work. So I suggested that I take a part-time job. But Caleb insisted that was not the case. In the end, I was still a full-time housewife. One day, one of Caleb's relatives called me out of the blue. I picked up the phone, feeling a little defensive. The relative on the other end of the line called my name in a panic. Caleb's mother has collapsed. I froze for a moment at the unexpected words. According to my relative, she had gone to visit my mother-in-law a few hours earlier. She found my mother-in-law lying in the yard. She called an ambulance, which rushed to the scene and took my mother-in-law to a general hospital. I prepared myself in a panic and ran out of the house. When I arrived at the hospital, I was told that her condition was still too unpredictable. As we were talking about this, Caleb came running in, out of breath. We moved to the hospital room to check on my mother-in-law. Sleeping in bed, my mother-in-law's body was covered with various tubes and it was painful to watch.
"Mom!"
My husband called out to her, but of course, she did not respond. Caleb stayed in the hospital room for the rest of the day, and I decided to go home and get everything I needed for the hospital stay. After a while, my mother-in-law recovered enough to be able to sit up by herself. However, it is difficult to do anything without someone's help. I'm glad she's able to get up. I wonder if she will be able to walk again if she continued to do her physical therapy. When my mother-in-law's discharge date was approaching next week, I said this to Caleb. Then, he started to say something I didn't understand.
"Oh yeah. Are you ready? We'll be leaving this house next week, so you'd better start packing our stuff."
I couldn't understand what he meant. Caleb seemed annoyed, as if he didn't like my reaction.
"We don't need this house, since we are going to live with my mom at my parents' house."
You're still as damn as ever, aren't you? Does that mean I'm going to live with my mother-in-law after she gets out of the hospital? I never heard anything about that. What? Did you decide to move in together without talking to me? Have you already canceled the lease on this house? When I said that, my husband became even more grumpy.
"Of course, I've already canceled the lease. It's the right thing for us to do as a family, to live together and help her. Don't tell me you don't want to live with her, do you? I'm the one who makes our living, so I won't accept any complaints."
He said so and went back to his room with deliberate footsteps. I never thought that Caleb would take such a hard-line approach. I can't believe he's canceling the lease on this apartment. I have no choice but to move out. I know he is worried about his mother, but this is too much. I sighed deeply. A few days passed, and suddenly I was living with my mother-in-law. I had never been a caregiver before, so everything was new to me. I had to spend most of my day feeding, bathing, and toileting for my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law didn't want me to take care of her, and she hardly communicated with me. Furthermore, When I tried to talk to her, she would hide in bed saying she was in pain. When my mother-in-law was healthy, we didn't have a bad relationship. In fact, we sometimes exchanged the delicious-looking snacks we found at the department store. Perhaps she was too frail to care for others. On the other hand, my husband Caleb, who had forced us to move in together, rarely came home. After work, he would go out for drinks and come home in the morning. Even on his days off, he would find some reason to go out. When he comes home, all he does is play video games in his room. I decided to talk to Caleb while he was playing games. I know you can't avoid working overtime or drinking with your colleagues, but can't you at least help me take care of your mother when you are at home? Or I would like you to help me with the housework. I said this, and Caleb replied without looking away from the screen.
What are you being so naive? Housework and caregiving are both your jobs. I'm tired from working, you know. Oh, I'm almost out of coffee. Go make me some. And clean this room, okay? And take these to the dry cleaner. I need them by Wednesday.
My husband spoke one-sidedly and threw his work clothes at me. This time, I was annoyed and retorted, "That's enough! I've been doing housework and taking care of your mother every day for the past month without a break. Why can't you at least help me a little?" Caleb then slams the game controller down on the desk and stands up with a mighty thud.
How dare you talk to me like that? Who do you think you owe your livelihood to? If you have a problem with me, then get out. Come on, get your shit together and get out. Well, I feel sorry for my mom. She's going to be left alone without anyone to take care of her.
That being said, I couldn't say a word. It's true, I only have a little money saved up, and I can't leave my mother-in-law who can't do anything for herself. I held back, picked up his suit, and left the room. After about 6 months of such a difficult life, my mother-in-law suddenly passed away. I woke up in the morning and went to check on her like I always do. But that day, she was no longer breathing. I called an ambulance and took her to the hospital, but it was too late. Caleb was in tears and sad. I don't know why, but I couldn't cry. I felt cold when I saw Caleb, crying without hesitation. I thought to myself, you didn't do anything to help her. And when I realized that I don't have to take care of her anymore, I felt a sense of relief. I felt guilty for feeling that way. Time passed so quickly. After the wake and funeral, I suddenly realized that 2 weeks had passed since my mother-in-law was gone. It's time to organize her belongings. After my husband left for work, I started cleaning my mother-in-law's room. I put her favorite clothes and accessories into the cardboard boxes, one after another. But there wasn't many, so the work was over soon. Next, I opened the cabinet by my mother-in-law's bedside. There was almost nothing in it, but there was a big can on the bottom shelf. I thought I had seen it somewhere before, and it was a can of assorted sweets I had given her when she was still in good health. I wondered why it was there. I opened the lid of the can. There was a letter inside. When I picked up the envelope, I found the words, "Dear Lydia," on it.
I hurriedly opened it and looked inside. In trembling letters, there was a message for me. Lydia, I am sorry for making you take care of me. I was ashamed of myself for forcing you to work for me every day. I was also ashamed of my son, Caleb. I know how bad he was to you. Lydia, you should leave him and live your life the way you want. My mother-in-law knew everything. She knew that her son was being selfish and that I was suffering from it. At the end of the letter, she wrote, I am glad that I was able to spend the last days of my life with you, Lydia. Thank you. At that moment, I cried for the first time since my mother-in-law passed away. It was as if everything I had been holding back was flowing out of me. I cried and cried until my tears ran dry. And then I made up my mind. I would divorce my husband. 10 days has passed since I found a letter from my mother-in-law. My husband is still treating me like a slave. Lydia, I'm missing one of my socks. Where is it? Oh, and take my car to the car wash today. You've got nothing to do, right? He's going out with his colleagues for golfing today. I guess he's completely forgotten about it. But today is our wedding anniversary. Well, I don't even care about it anymore. What are you going to do while I'm golfing? You can't just sit around, you know? You have to prepare dinner, clean my room, clean the bathroom. You have a lot to do. His arrogance left me speechless. Hey, you hear me? Bring me my sock and a jacket. Hurry up, or I'll be late. At the moment, Caleb fell to the floor, clutching his stomach. He was in pain and sweating. He told me to call an ambulance as if he was trying to squeeze out the words. I froze at the suddenness of the situation, and my husband yelled at me. Hurry up, you moron! You're really useless. Can't you even call an ambulance? Hearing these words, I became strangely calm. Then I called 911. And within minutes, an ambulance arrived with paramedics. The paramedics quickly assessed Caleb's condition and placed him on a stretcher. As they put him on a stretcher, Anne said to me, You are his wife, aren't you? Would you come with us to the hospital? Caleb looked at me with pleading eyes as he was placed on the stretcher. I looked him right in the eye and said, No, I will not. I said that firmly with no hesitation. What? Caleb's voice came out as if he had lost his mind. This man is a stranger. So, I am not coming. Please take care of the rest. Then, I confronted Caleb with something I had been carrying in my pocket for the past few days. It was the divorce papers that I was forced to sign when we had a fight a while ago. My husband had always told me that if I disobeyed him, he would serve me with the divorce papers. Caleb tried to snatch the divorce papers from me, but he can't seem to move due to the pain. So he has to lean back on the stretcher without any efforts. Excuse me, but please, leave now. As I said this, the paramedics finally took my husband away. In the ambulance, he must have been looked as a poor husband whose wife has given him a divorce. He should be embarrassed. I watched the ambulance leave and then left the house. It took a long time, but the divorce papers were accepted, and the divorce was officially finalized.
While Caleb was in the hospital for a week, I was busy packing my belongings and sending them to my parents' house. Then one day, I ran into Caleb when I was at the grocery store.
Lydia, please don't do this to me.
You love me, don't you? Please, don't leave me. I admit I've made some mistakes. You listened to me no matter what I said.
So I just got carried away.
The overbearing attitude he had a few months ago, it's gone, and he looks completely pathetic. What are you talking about? The divorce is already finalized. It's too late for you to act so fragile. Go ahead, live your life as you please. He didn't really think that I was going to divorce him, and he looked quite shocked. His hands were shaking and his face was turning pale. Well, that's that then. Bye. It had been 6 months since Caleb and I had divorced. Caleb had once visited my parents' house. He had been ringing the intercom at my parents' house and calling out my name so loudly that I had no choice but to see him. Sure enough, he wanted me to get back together with him. When I kept quiet, he began to reveal his current lifestyle to me. He can't cook because he has forced me to do all the housework. He eats only TV dinners or eats out. He has gained 10 pounds since the divorce. It's true that he put a lot of fat on his face and stomach that you can see at a glance. In addition, he doesn't seem to understand how to do laundry. The shirts he wears are wrinkled and smell weird, making him look even filthy.
I finally realized how great you have done, Lydia. If I don't do something, the people at the company won't like me.
Caleb said so and started sobbing. The cheap tears. In other words, he wants to treat me like a servant again. There is no way I'm going back to that. No, never. If you make any more noise, I'll call the police. I treated him like he was a stranger. Then, Caleb started to be afraid of the words police and left the house crying. I'm sure he wouldn't get involved anymore. I hope so. My ex-husband seemed to be leading a very inconvenient life. On the other hand, I was leading a fairly comfortable life. For a while, I was staying at my parents' house, but now I rent a small apartment and live alone. My standard of living is much lower than when I lived with my ex-husband. But I still like this life, that I can have my own time. I thought it would be difficult to get another job at my age. But a friend of mine happened to have a friend who retired, and I was able to get a job to take her place. I feel so happy to be able to spend time and money only on myself, without anyone telling me what to do. From now on, I want to take care of myself at my own pace. It's the beginning of the new chapter of my life.
My elite husband had an affair. When I caught him and his girlfriend, she started to shake uncontrollably.
You're actually terrible at cooking. My husband assumed that I didn't do the housework and hired a housekeeper, because I took care of my appearance every day, even though the food he was eating was cooked by his own mother. He claimed that I prepared it instead of the housekeeper today. I was tempted to ask him if he had forgotten the taste of his home cooking, but he wouldn't have believed me, and that would have only made me feel vain. When I started to get fed up with my marriage, he came up with an even bigger problem. My name is Gabby, 28 years old. I'm a beauty influencer, a blogger, and a housewife. My 2-year-older husband, Matt, is the opposite of me. He is an associated professor at a well-known private university and is busy with his research every day. He even has to stay overnight when it was time for the senior thesis. I want to take good care of such a hard-working husband, that I prepared healthy meals and make sure the clothes are neatly ironed. I try my best to create a comfortable living space. Matt was in the same club as me in high school. We started dating then. After graduating, he went to attend the university, and I got a job at my favorite cosmetic brand. He was a nerd who stayed away from girls in high school. I was attracted to his sincerity and seriousness as we spent time together in club activities, and I confessed my feeling to him. It was the first time a girl had ever asked him out, and he seemed to be intimidated, but he agreed. After that, I started to taking care of his look and giving him a haircut. My intuition was not to be underestimated. When I gave him a makeover, he looked very much to my liking. Of course, it wasn't just the outside that I liked. As we spent time together, I came to admire his knowledgeable and dependable side, and even liked his naive and out-of-touch attitude towards girls. Before we got married, he was crazy about me because I took very good care of my appearance compared to the other woman. "I'm so lucky to have met you," he used to tell me. I always reply that I was the luckiest, as I liked him for a long time. We were always happy with each other. But then, he started to look down on me after we got married 2 years ago. "Honey, let's grow up, since we are married now." He looked at me with disdain. When I made mistakes doing the housework at the beginning of our marriage, I ironed his shirts in the wrong way and made creases, and had the drainage clogged by not cleaning it. I was also not used to cooking and made numerous mistakes, but I made an effort and became good at it. I also believed I gave a truly comfortable home life to him as best as I could. He seemed to think I was still the same as when we were first married. "You should call my mom and have her show you how to do things," he blatantly suggested. "Call your mom? For what? Why? What else do I need to learn? Did I do something wrong? I don't mean it like that. But you don't change the way you look, even after we got married. I suppose you are not getting any better at housework and the food. You buy ready-made somewhere and put it on a plate, right? Or have you hired a housekeeper?" He plucked my nerves that I yelled at him for the first time. "How could you say such things to me? I've been putting in my efforts. Do you think I'm just hanging around while you're at work? How dare you?" He frowned at me and uttered, "Why do women get so emotional?" Then he walked out. I had never gotten temperamental with him before, so his comment made me wonder if he was comparing me with someone else. I tried to erase such a thought by reminding myself that he was too honest to cheat on me, and somehow suppressed my anxiety. The next day, my mother-in-law really came to our house, so I had to let her in. I was supposed to go out for blogging, but my plans completely fell through. She was a quiet and gentle person, so even if there was something wrong with the way I did my chores. She wasn't going to talk to me in a nasty way. I thought to myself as I offered a cup of tea with a forced smile. She had been scanning the room and said, "The room looks immaculate to the point it looks brand new." And then she looks astonished as she sipped her tea. "This is so nice. It tastes much better than the one in cafes. I'm glad you like it. Matt told me to learn how to take care of the house from you. I've been worried that I was going about it the wrong way." "I see. Shall we check together?" "Please, and let me know if I do anything wrong." I showed her how I ironed and had her check the toilet and bathroom. Matt asked me to come here and check only yesterday. I doubt that you can get everything so perfectly done if you did it in a rush. I can see that you take really good care of his work clothes too. What's wrong with him? Complaining about your amazing job. Maybe he's not satisfied with my cooking. I'll make lunch, so can you please stay and try it?" She watched me cook in the kitchen and praised me. "You are so efficient. So much better than me." She set up the table for me, and we sat down to eat. She exclaimed, "How delicious! Actually, when you were first married, Matt told me that you made a lot of mistakes. I can see you worked very hard." When she praised me, I felt the warmth in my heart and tears came up. "What's wrong?" "Sorry. I'm just happy to hear that. Matt never appraised my food, so I was worried that he didn't like it, even though I thought it was good." I'm finally assured. Once I started speaking out my feelings, my tears flowed freely. As an adult, it was embarrassing to cry in front of someone, but she spoke kind words to me again, which made me cry even more. "You are doing great. I know you're busy doing more than just being a housewife. You should take it easy. Other housewives are more hands-off. You are very hardworking and dedicated. You need to take a break when you can." She was so kind to me all the way, and even offered to scold Matt for me. I had never heard of a mother-in-law around me taking the wife's side and complained about her own son. I really thought I married into a nice family. Matt seemed to have been told off by his mother, and from then on, he never remarked about the chores. Apparently, he assumed that I was neglecting my housework because I had my nails done and spent time putting on makeup. My relief was short-lived. "Hey, hon, it just doesn't make sense to me. I went to my friend's house the other day. His wife wore minimal makeup, and her hands were rough. She cooked wearing a used apron. But you keep your hair long and healthy, and your hands are well taken care of. Your apron always looks clean, and your makeup is perfect too. My mom says you are hardworking, but don't you actually have a housekeeper?" Matt again brought back the subject. "Oh my gosh! How long has your friend been married?" About 5 years. "What does his wife do?" "She is a waitress in an upscale restaurant." When I asked for more details, I found that the living condition was so different between them and us. Firstly, we lived in 2 bedrooms apartment, but to live in a 2-story house. The wife had a full-time job on top of taking care of the house. And the day Matt was there, she actually just got back from work and started cooking. No wonder she looked as he described. I was sure she wasn't allowed to put on tons of makeup to work. She must have had some washing and cleaning to do, both at work and home. So her hands naturally become dry. After 5 years of living like that, it would have been hard to keep a youthful look unless she decided to do so. I made my living writing beauty blogs, so I was just trying to look good as a job. I sighed in dismay at how simple-minded he was. You don't observe people at all, do ya? You go into great detail about your research, but you don't use your brain for anything else.
What the hell? You, a high school graduate, put me with a master's degree down. You and I are on different levels. Don't you ever look down at me.
How's our education level relevant to the subject?
Yes, it is. You're ignorant. That you dress up every day and pretend to do your chores. You're really just hanging around while I'm at work, aren't you?
Do you seriously think so?
I can't think of it any other way. You're not a celebrity. Even after the marriage, you stay looking immature with a flashy appearance. It's actually painful to watch.
I know I'm not a celebrity, but look at my blog. I tried to show him my blog page and social media account, but he was annoyed and looked away. Then he insulted me with a terribly unpleasant tone of voice.
Oh, right. You're still keeping the old hobby you used to do. My students seem to be into that kind of thing. Don't you feel ashamed being on the same level as them at almost 30 years old?
His words shocked me beyond belief, and I turned off the screen. How could you say such a thing when you know I make a living with these?
It's like a part-time job for a student, right?
He saw my work before we were married and praised me.
Wow, amazing.
You are really talented. I couldn't understand how his admiration turned into such spite. I was too hurt that I couldn't sleep and stayed up in the living room all night. Suddenly, my mother-in-law's gentle smile flashed in my mind. How could Matt be the son of such a kind mother? Maybe he took his stoic father's side. Those thoughts went on and on all night. I went into depression and couldn't do any work or chores from the next day. I half-heartedly served a bowl of cereal and coffee for breakfast in front of Matt, and went back to sleep until noon after he left. When I was awake, I had no motivation to do anything, not even watch TV. I forced myself to take a walk, but it was just dull, so I went home and slept again. Matt came back and said to me, who didn't came out of bed,
"See? I was right. My mom wouldn't have blamed me."
I had no energy to retort to his sarcasm. My mother-in-law came to check on me the next day.
"Hi, Gabby. I'm really sorry about that idiot son of mine. He seemed to think he's right no matter what I say to him. Let me do some housework for you today. You take a rest."
She cheerily did the cleaning and laundry and even prepared dinner for us. I am very sorry to have bothered you. I couldn't say anything else but apologized to her. She just smiled and shrugged me off like it was nothing. When Matt ate the dinner, he smirked condescendingly at me and said,
"So, this is your cooking, right? You really had a housekeeper prepare for food before, didn't you?" You finally decide to make it on your own after I guessed it right. You are actually a terrible cook. Even though I had no willpower, I couldn't ignore his comment. Apologize. Excuse me? I'm telling you to apologize for criticizing the food. You are the worst kind of person. Asshole. He was about to say something, but I couldn't stand to listen to another unpleasant word out of his mouth. I quickly grabbed my purse and got out of the apartment. So nice to be a carefree housewife. I was enraged hearing his voice behind me. Then I went to see my in-laws, who offered me to stay. Not only my mother-in-law, but my father-in-law was upset with Matt, and they apologized to me over and over. I couldn't help but wonder how such a twisted person could come out of these kind parents. Still, he was my husband, and I shouldn't have given up on him easily. With this thought, I went to discuss the matter with him at the university the next day. I had been there a few times to deliver the materials he had forgotten at home. Back then, his students poked fun at him, and he seems to be very uncomfortable that I started to make sure he didn't forget anything. I felt nostalgic as I walked towards his office, but on the way there, I saw him walking happily with a girl I didn't know. She looked to be around 20 years old, so she must have been his student. She looked around to check there was nobody and hang on to Matt's arm as she purred his name. Careful! If anyone sees us! Contrary to his words, he looked quite pleased. I should have kept my composure, but I found myself in front of them. Wait a minute. What do you think you're doing? Are you cheating on me? Matt was clearly annoyed with my appearance, but he proudly introduced the girl to me. This is Rachel. She's a student here and is also in my workshop. I've been seeing her for 3 months now. I realized that I prefer a woman who is well-educated and well-spoken rather than a low-educated one. I never thought he would mess with his students. I was too shocked that I asked him an unnecessary question. Does that mean you were having an affair? Oh my God, you're so slow. That's what I just told you. You see, Rachel, my wife is not very smart. There are so many brilliant minds in this university, and Rachel is one of the top students who are moving on to graduate school. She is a world away from an uneducated, caked-up hag like you. We're getting a divorce, ASAP. He grimaced at me, but Rachel was turning white next to him. She seemed to be shaking as well. What's wrong, sweetie? He noticed her unusual demeanor and asked her worriedly, We're done. Her teary eyes looked straight into Matt's as she proclaimed, What happened? Don't you get it? Your wife is a super famous influencer. What do you think would happen if she announces your adultery on her platforms? People would find out I was the mistress, and my life would be over then. She was looking white as a ghost and started apologizing furiously. I am very sorry. I had no idea he was your husband. I just wanted to have a fling. She looked terrible as she trembled, and her voice cracked and quavered. I smirked as I spoke to her. A fling, you say? If you were so smart, you should have calculated the risk of your fling. But it's good to know what happens if you messed with a married man while you were young.
It's better to experience this kind of failure at your age. It's easier to bounce back when you're young, you know? She made a jerking motion when I giggled. Don't worry. I'm not going to post about the affair and divorce. But I'll make sure you take responsibility. I wish you a good life. Yes, I'm really sorry. I'll break up with Matt, she declared and left her contact details with me before she ran away. Then, the real deal started. Now, you and I should have a proper discussion about the future. Come to your parents' house after work. Let's discuss this at length, including your parents. I visited an office of a divorce lawyer before I headed back. I had prepared the necessary documents, so the consultation was smooth. All I had to do was wait for Matt to show up. When he finally arrived at the house at 9 p.m., his father yelled at him first.
Matt, sit here. I have a lot to say to you.
He looked frightened as he sat down, and his father continued.
What the hell were you thinking? Having an affair? I am embarrassed to have you as a son. Moreover, you are so wrong about Gabby's work. She's making much more money than you. What?
I showed my financial report to perplexed Matt. Here you go. This is from last month. I have some projects from big companies that pay a lot. And I am also active in video distribution now. So I am making a lot of money. It's more than double your salary, isn't it? I was making all this money and doing all the housework.
No way! Your hands don't look rough at all. It's crazy looking like you and doing all the housework at the same time, isn't it?
After being told the same thing over and over again, I was quite annoyed and thanked him sarcastically. Thank you for your compliments. You know, I'm a beauty influencer, so I'm super careful about how I look. I use rubber gloves when I wash dishes, and I have so many aprons that I can change every day. I watch what I eat and keep my skin and hair looking good. These things depend on what you eat. It's a false accusation to say that I don't do housework just because I look pretty, without knowing anything about it.
But my friend's wife...
Maybe she doesn't care about how she looks. She can't wear a tons of makeup when she works at an upscale restaurant anyway. Cleanliness comes first. So no accessorizing. In some restaurant, you must keep your hair long and be able to tie it back. You can't expect her to make an effort to improve her appearance. He became speechless. And we are not done talking about the affair. How could you fool around with your student? Don't you think that your behavior is more embarrassing than my appearance?
No, because she's smart and pretty. And most of all, she's dedicated and hardworking.
The moment he said that, his mother sighed and shook her head. The dedicated and hardworking person you like is exactly referring to Gabby. She works hard every day, perfecting her chores while working, with no time to rest. Didn't you notice yesterday? She was exhausted. So I cooked dinner, but you must have thought it tasted different.
Oh my god! That disgusting food? But that was Gabby. Disgusting? I cooked it. Do you have a poor taste bud? You grew up eating my food. But have you already forgotten? Well, that's how good Gabby must have been. Cooking doesn't improve overnight.
You should acknowledge how much effort she puts in for you." Matt slumped down and said nothing to retort. He must have finally realized he was wrong. But it was too late. "Well, it seems we have discussed enough. Let's wrap up the family meeting now. I hired a divorce lawyer, so you will hear from him soon." Matt was flustered as soon as I pulled out on my lawyer's card. His parents were on my side and told him not to make any more trouble. "Matt, be ready to pay a hefty sum of alimony on the grounds of adultery. Also, if you have any conscience left, don't even think about the division of property. You didn't help me with chores at all, but insulted me all the time, and have never cooperated as a couple. You have no right to my assets," I declared him. "I'm really sorry. It's all my fault. I'll never do it again. You've been right all along." He grabbed my hands, but my mind was set. I told my in-laws that I was very grateful for their kindness and care. "Thank you so much for everything." I tried to smile, but it was difficult to hold it as I held back my tears. The in-laws promised me that they would make sure Matt follows through his responsibility. I returned to my parents' house for the time being, and Matt and I started proceeding with an uncontested divorce soon after. I was able to receive 70% from property distribution. When I asked Rachel to pay $10,000 in compensation, she cried to her parents for help. As a result, she took a break from her study and was forced to get a job to pay off her debt on a monthly basis. She was told that if she wanted to go back to the university, she would have to pay off her debt to her parents first. Since Matt started living alone, his apartment became a dump, and he could no longer lead a decent life. His students laughed at his disheveled appearance. He couldn't concentrate on his research anymore, and his professors were disappointed with him. They said it's going to be tough for him to get a promotion. As for me, after the divorce was finalized and settled, I started living alone in the city. I feel relieved and carefree now that I only have to take care of myself. I will continue to improve myself in my work. I am determined to work harder now that I was single.
My husband left our son in the hospital and went on vacation. 3 days later, I'm told he has died.
My name is Christine, a 41-year-old housewife. I met my husband Mark at work, and we got married. After 5 years of marriage, we finally had our son, Jake, who is now 5 years old. He's so cute at this age. I would love to spend all day with him if I could, but our financial situation doesn't allow me to do so. I have to leave my son at a daycare center and work in order to help with our income. "Mommy, I want an omelette tomorrow," a request from my adorable son. How could I not give him what he wants? Maybe Jake understands my busy schedule, because he never requests a difficult meal. But it's probably just because I'm not a good cook, elaborate dishes. But I honestly think omelets are pretty difficult to make. To be able to make them fluffy and perfect is truly a skill. But never mind that. I'm just making excuses for myself now. Mark was very happy when Jake was first born. He was, after all, our miracle after so many years of trying. We were a very close family, going on drives and outing to the park every weekend. But our family dynamics slowly started to change after Jake turned 3 years old. When Jake finally grew out of his terrible threes phase, Mark started coming home late more frequently. Even from before, he had been complaining about how he couldn't deal with Jake's fussy phase. Maybe that's why he was coming home late so often. Whenever he called to tell me that he was working overnight, I couldn't help but sigh and feel disappointed. The truth was, he was playing slot machines, killing time at a restaurant, at the cinema, and such. I know this because Mark's colleague told me. Since we met at work, his colleagues are also my ex-colleagues. I resigned after we got married and started working a part-time job, but I still keep in touch with my former colleagues. Obviously, Mark knows all of this. How can he think I won't find out? Part of me is bothered by all of this, but I would rather have Mark come home late than have to watch him be annoyed by Jake's fussiness. Because I never said anything, he started coming home even later and later. Sometimes even in the morning. Who does he think he is? Sometimes I could smell sweet perfume on his suit. It doesn't make me feel good. Of course, I feel angry at times. But Mark was a decent father when Jake wasn't being fussy, so I was able to turn a blind eye to his behavior. 2 years has passed since then. Jake has grown into an energetic and cheeky 5-year-old. I'm so in awe of Jake's growth. And at the same time, I am so fed up by Mark's bad attitude. Oh no! You spilled a bit of tea, sweetie. Wait here while I go get a cloth. What is wrong with you? You're 5-year-old now and still can't hold a cup properly? Mark gets annoyed and starts to yell whenever I try to deal with Jake's mistakes. Daddy, play with me. I'm busy. Don't bother me. Mark yells and refuses to play with Jake. Hey, about tonight's dinner? I don't need dinner. How can I peacefully eat dinner in such a chaotic environment? I don't even feel like eating your horribly cooked food. I'm eating out. Mark gets angry at anything I say. We should go somewhere on your next day off. Are you serious? I'm tired from work. Let me rest on my day off. No matter what I say, he just yells at me. We just can't seem to have a proper conversation. Is Mark still stuck in his fussy phase? He should have grown out of it 40 years ago. I once asked him why he was so angry all the time. And he got angry, as always, and said, It's because you are useless, obviously. And you're passing that gene on to Jake. I wish he turned out more like me. What a horrible thing to say. Jake is both of ours. At least he has a handsome face like me. He was basically saying that all of Jake's good qualities are from him, until the bad qualities are from me. I just couldn't believe his audacity. My frustration with Mark continued to grow. His words and actions were causing me a lot of emotional pain. I was considering divorcing him too. He was one strike away from ending our marriage because of his behavior and lack of respect for our family. Yet, I stayed because I still had love for my husband. Even though Jake was scared of Mark, he still loved him too. I was so tired of being with my husband who was hardly ever in a good mood. But I didn't have the courage to break up our family. One day, my husband brought up something. What? A trip? Yes, with some colleagues from work. You know them, don't you? The ones I'm close to. Oh,
The two guys who were enjoying their single life?
Yeah, them. They're going on a trip together, so I decided to join them.
Seriously?
What's wrong with that? I've been patient for a long time.
This family takes up all my time. I never had time for myself.
And you spend all of the money I earn on useless luxuries. I have the right to relax once in a while.
I am not spending any money on luxuries. We live so frugally since you only give me the bare minimum amount of money.
This was the truth. I leave Jake at daycare and work. But the harder I work,
and the more money I make, the less money Mark puts into our family. I actually put more into it than him,
while he is probably playing around and spending whatever he has left. Otherwise, there is no way he could afford to pay for this trip. Shut up! I'm going away for a week from tomorrow, whether you like it or not. And you better not complain.
Tomorrow?
I was surprised about the trip in general, but was even more surprised that it was from tomorrow. I could feel my blood start to boil. I was about to argue back when I heard,
"Mommy!"
Jake, who was supposed to be sleeping, had woken up. I ran to him, flustered.
"I'm sorry, Jake. Did I wake you up? Come on, let's go back to your room so Mommy can sleep with you."
But the moment I touched his body to put him to sleep, I knew something was wrong.
"Jake, your body is so hot." "Mommy, my head hurts." "Jake?"
I looked at Jake's face, and the next moment, his eyes had rolled up and he collapsed. Panicked, I called an ambulance. Mark, who I naturally thought would accompany me, refused to come with us. There were so many things I wanted to say, but time was of the essence. I had no choice but to get into the ambulance alone. Thankfully, the test results showed that it was not a serious illness, but Jake was admitted to the hospital for more tests just in case. I called Mark to give him updates. What do you want? I can tell he's extremely annoyed, but I don't have time to worry about it. I explained to him what had happened and asked him to bring a change of clothes for the hospital stay. Are you joking? That was his response. He continued, I can't make it.
What?
I said I can't make it. I don't want to be late for tomorrow's trip. So, I'm going to stay at my colleague's tonight.
Are you serious? Your son is in the hospital, and you're still going on a trip?
Of course I am. He doesn't need me there for a simple checkup.
Jake is suffering from high fever.
So? There's nothing I can do.
Yes, there is. I asked you to...
Oh, I have to go. I'll make sure to buy you a souvenir.
No, wait!
He hung up.
Mark one-sidedly ended the conversation and hung up on me. I called him again, but it went to his voicemail immediately. You son of a bitch! You turned off your phone! Unfortunately, I didn't have his colleague's phone number. What an asshole! My anger echoed through the hospital. In the end, I called my parents and asked them to help me. I thought about Mark's behavior. He abandoned his son in the hospital. That's 2 strikes. The 3rd strike is just around the corner. I could feel it. 3 days later, the tests are over, and Jake is back to his usual energetic self. The results showed no problems, and he would be discharged from the hospital tomorrow. I planned to buy some pudding for him. I got up and turned my cell phone to check my messages. That's when it happened. My cell phone suddenly started vibrating. I almost dropped it, but I grabbed it in time to see that I was getting a call from a former colleague, Cindy.
Hello?
My former colleague's voice sounded panicked.
Christine, where are you?
Huh? I'm at the hospital.
Never mind that. It's an emergency. Apparently, your husband died in an accident.
I didn't know what she was talking about. Without thinking, I replied, What?
This is a joke, right?
But I continued to hear her voice on the other end of the phone, and I ran out in a panic. My husband had passed away. That fact alone was shocking. But my colleague continued.
Apparently, Mark was on a trip alone with a woman,
and the woman ran into the oncoming lane while driving and hit a tree. There had to be a misunderstanding. Mark was supposed to be traveling with his male colleagues. There was no way he was alone with a woman. There was no way he could have been killed in a car accident with the woman. It's not possible. It's not possible. In a panic, I called my parents and asked them to look after Jake. I rushed to the hospital where my husband was admitted. In the midst of my panic, I suddenly wondered why they called the company before me. Anyway, it seemed like it wasn't a lie, so I had to hurry. According to my former colleague, the men who were supposed to be with my husband were safe. Obviously, that's because they weren't together. Mark didn't even bother briefing them about his made-up alibi. He was with another woman. That's 3 strikes. 3 strikes and you're out. I wondered if he really died. I needed to verify the facts of this situation.
Honey!
A rattle opened the hospital room. There was only one person in the room, and it was undoubtedly Mark. The bandages wrapped around his hands and feet looked painful, but his chest was moving up and down. He was breathing. It seems like Cindy's information that he had passed away was wrong. Mark was alive.
You're alive,
I murmured, moving closer to him. When I looked at his face, I could see that his eyes were slightly open. It could have been my imagination, but he seemed a little shaken. Maybe he didn't think the company would contact me right away. My husband spat out in his usual grumpy tone.
Took you long enough. Your husband's been in an accident, and it takes you ages to get here. You useless piece of shit.
Well, good to see he is still his usual self. He looks pretty battered, but it seems he only broke his left hand and right leg. Apparently, the rental car was a wreck though. What a lucky guy. I'm glad you're okay, I tell him, to which he replies,
You better take good care of me.
Huh, he's definitely feeling fine. Good to know. Well, let's get to it, shall we? You may have escaped death, but you don't get a pass on 3 strikes. I took out a sheet of paper. When I say I'm glad you're okay, I'm talking about your right hand. If you had broken your right hand, you wouldn't be able to hold a pen to sign this.
What are you talking about?
I unfolded the paper in front of a very confused Mark.
Huh? What? Divorce papers?
Yes, I was preparing it, which is why I got here late. I know you're injured, so I'll just leave it here. Make sure you sign it.
You must be joking. Why would I sign this?
Well, you told your girlfriend you were getting a divorce
didn't you? The reason you came home late every night was because you were with her. Was this trip a prenuptial trip too? Good for you. Now you can marry your sweet Michelle. How do you even know her name? Because I spoke to her, obviously. In fact, before coming to Mark's hospital room, I stopped by the woman he was with room. She was also in the same hospital. I asked for the woman who was in a car accident and immediately found her. She had broken some bones as well, but she seemed better off than Mark. Her parents were also in the hospital room. I asked her to tell me everything. I couldn't tell her I was going to see Mark after this, so I had to talk to her without yet knowing whether he was dead or alive. But it became clear that he was alive. Even with her parents bombarding her with questions, she glared at me and said, "Let him go." I don't know what she sees in you. You are cold to your wife and kids. You don't pay your bills. You go out every night. You don't care when your kid is in the hospital. And the cheating. It's game over. My husband's face instantly turned pale. I had expected him to become defensive, but that didn't change my decision. No, she's just for fun, you know. You're the only one I love. Just stop. Here you go. I've filled out the form with my part. Even if you tear it up, I've got plenty of spares. In fact, why don't I just call a lawyer? A lawyer? That's right. We need to figure out alimony and child support. So, I think that will be better. No, wait a second. What did you say? I mean, please, reconsider. As soon as I gave the death glare to Mark, who was still speaking in a pompous tone, he suddenly shriveled up. I don't want a divorce. Why not? He stuttered. Because... Why don't I just say it for the both of us? I took a deep breath and said without stopping. Because I'm working and paying for everything. You can spend your money as you like. And pay to play around with young women. If you have children, you can make them take care of you in the future. And you can sit back and enjoy life while your wife does all the dirty housework. A wife at home for the security. And a girlfriend to have fun with. What a great life. But if you divorce me, that would all disappear, wouldn't it? Mark's mouth hung open, not knowing what to say. Did he lose his voice or what? No response. Sorry to have to tell you that your perfect life plan is now ruined. You can make a new life plan with Michelle or whoever you like. But my son and I will not be part of it. Just pretend you died and have a new life. I said everything I wanted to say. I turned to leave the hospital room. Wait! I heard my husband's pathetic voice over my shoulder, but kept walking. In the coming days, I hired a lawyer and started divorce proceedings. The discussion included Michelle, who was discharged from the hospital. When Mark said he had no intention of divorcing me, Michelle became absolutely livid. They got into a huge fight when I brought up alimony payment. You've ruined my life! I don't give a damn about a woman who hits on a married man. You're the one who made a pass at me. Shut up! I never did that. I thought to myself, can you just hurry up and sign the papers? I watched the two of them argue in silence. No matter how much Mark resisted, the evidence was all there. In the end, our divorce was official. I got almost all the alimony payment that I wanted. Child support was to be paid in one lump sum.
After all the discussions were over, my lawyer and I left the room, but Mark and Michelle were still arguing. I wondered what would happen to their relationship after this. Actually, I don't really care. I told them, I hope you have a lovely life together, before leaving the room, which might have been petty. I hope Jake doesn't take after my pettiness. Despite all that had happened, Jake and I had returned to a peaceful life. Jake, who no longer had to worry about Mark's mood, had become surprisingly cheerful. Seeing this, I regretted not getting a divorce earlier. Mark's attitude must have caused my son so much pain. It was the same for me. How could I have clung to such a horrible husband? Living with just the two of us, I realized something. We were perfectly fine without Mark. In fact, every day is a joy. With that being said, Mark is still Jake's one and only father. If he wants to see him, I will let him. I asked him, "Do you want to see Daddy?" "No, why?" he replied. After the divorce was finalized, I sent Mark an email after confirming that the alimony and child support payments had been made. He replied instantly with the subject title, "Help." I opened it, and the message was laughable. Apparently, my former colleague had spread the story about his cheating to the whole company. Mark, stressed from all the painful stares and gossip, kept making mistakes at work. As a result, he had to leave the company. My parents have cut me off, and I have nowhere to go. I can't live like this. Please help me. Can you believe it? So, being the kind-hearted person that I am, I replied, "Why don't you ask your sweet Michelle to help you?" And guess what he said? I broke up with Michelle. Her parents cut her off too, and now she is missing. I can think clearly now. You are the only one that I love. You have to help me. Please, don't make me laugh. His messages still continued. I'm behind on my cell phone bill, and it's going to stop working tomorrow. Please, come and pick me up right away. I blocked him after that. We had long since moved, and Mark had no way of knowing where we were. As I put my phone on the table and sipped my tea, Jake came over and said, "What should we do on our day off tomorrow, Mommy?" I thought for a moment and said, "How about I pack us some lunch, and we can go to the aquarium?" A big smile erupted from Jake's face. "Yay! I want to go to the dolphin show." Seeing my son so alive and excited, I couldn't help but smile.
My husband skipped our honeymoon trip, saying his mom was in her, but she actually went on the trip with me.
My name is Kat. I'm finally engaged to Doug, my boyfriend of 10 years from high school. Since we've been visiting each other's houses for a long time, we already know the families well. We're only in our late 20s, but already have the vibe of a mature couple. You're finally going to be my daughter-in-law. I've been waiting for it. I'm also happy to finally be Mistress Jones like you. Doug's mother, Stacy, was so excited once the wedding preparation started. I adored her, who was always smiling and caring, and started to call her mom over the past 10 years. By the way, where's Doug? We can't decide on the seating if he's not here. I also need to ask him about his rehearsal. I'm at her house to go over the details of our wedding. He and I had different engagements, so we were supposed to meet there. Oh, he texted me earlier that he got some urgent things to take care of. He said we could decide ourselves. He's so irresponsible. Don't mind him. She frowned at her son's nonchalance. It reminds me of the time when I was waiting for him here using his house key and you came back before him. Oh, right. That was during the summer. I remember he didn't come back for a while, so we had fun chatting away. He supposedly bumped into the friend and ended up hanging out with him at the time. His habit of canceling plans has been going on for a long time. I got used to dealing with it after 10 years. Stacy and I reminisced about the past while working on the wedding plan together. Doug kept canceling the preparation for our wedding after that. His habits seemed to get worse than before, and he was aware of it himself. I know I'm acting weird lately. Perhaps I got pre-wedding blues. I'll get over it soon, so please be patient with me. I reluctantly showed my understanding when he excused himself, but I'd actually wanted him to apologize instead of asking me to tolerate him. Wasn't it usually the bride who had the pre-wedding blues? Besides, was he really that sensitive? Never mind. By the way, what should we do for our honeymoon? Where do you want to go? I'm not keen to go overseas. I can't speak any other language than English anyway. I prefer to go somewhere within the country, like New York City, and eat. You're so not romantic. Well then, should we go to New Orleans and have jambalaya? Still about food. We discussed our honeymoon happily. My mood wasn't yet to be fully recovered, but we were in the middle of some fun planning. It wasn't very mature to stay in a bad mood. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. His so-called pre-wedding blues didn't get any better after that, and he kept canceling our meetings. There were nights when he didn't come home, saying he was going out with friends for one last bachelor drink. I felt a lot of frustration and a little mistrust. When I complained to him, he kept telling me, "Just for a little longer, I'll be back to myself when we get married." I was skeptical. Our wedding day arrived regardless of his odd behavior. It was a clear blue sky on the morning of the ceremony, and our prospects seemed to be bright. After 10 years of dating, we finally became a married couple, watched over by old friends, relatives, and colleagues. Doug swore to me that he would love only me for the rest of his life, and I imagined a bright future ahead of us. Once the wedding was over, it was time for our honeymoon after a short break. We were going to eat till we dropped for 4 nights, 5 days in New York City. I chose clothes for the climate, made a list of souvenirs, and put sticky notes in a guidebook. My excitement grew bigger by the day. On the morning of our departure, Doug went to the bakery to buy some breakfast. I was doing the final check of my luggage and putting on some makeup. A little later, I got a call from Doug. Wondering if my order was out of stock, I picked up the phone. "Hey, honey, I just got a call from the hospital. My mom was rushed to the emergency room." What? It was nothing to do with my breakfast, but an unanticipated incident. That energetic and cheerful Stacy was in trouble. The joyful melody playing in the background of Doug's voice contradicted the situation and annoyed me. "I'm heading there now. I can't go on a trip. You've been looking forward to it, so you go ahead. I'm really sorry." I won't be able to take a call for a while. Wait, which hospital is she in? He hung up on me before I finished my sentences. He turned off his phone right away, so I couldn't get in touch with him after that. I was flabbergasted. It was an important milestone in our life, yet another cancellation at the last minute. Well, this time was out of his control. After all, my mother-in-law, whom I adored, was rushed to the emergency room. Her request was on the list of souvenirs. She was looking forward to the chocolates from Mary Bell. There was no way I could go on a trip by myself. I decided to rush to the hospital as soon as I got in touch with Doug again. I was restless, wandering around the house and waiting to hear from him. My phone finally rang 30 minutes later. I picked it up even before the first ring finished. Yes. Hi, Kat. Good morning. You're leaving today, right? It seems cold there, so take care and enjoy your trip. Wait, is this Mom? The code was from the one who had supposedly been rushed to the hospital. I picked up the phone without checking the caller on the screen. I was totally confused about what was happening. Did Doug have two mothers? Maybe that one I knew was an adopted mom, and he had a birth mom? Is this really Mom? What's wrong with you? Why do you sound so strange? It was her for sure. I thought you were taken to the hospital. Huh? For what? I'm good as usual. She sounded dubious. I realized that Doug lied to me. It didn't matter to him that we just got married, but why? I couldn't figure out the reason. When Stacy finished listening to my explanation, she lowered the tone of her voice. I see. I'm really sorry about my idiot son. I don't know what he's trying to do. Well, can you hold for a minute? I didn't know why, but I was bothered by something. It was the cheerful melody I could hear in the background on Doc's call. I opened my tablet to see if I could figure out what was bugging me. My hunch was on point, and I found what I wanted to know right away. Hey, Kat, what's going on? Mom, do you want to go on a trip with me? What? Let's go to New York City together. I could feel that she was contemplating. My brain cells began to work toward revenge against Doug. Watch out, bastard. Stacy and I enjoyed our trip and returned home after 5 days. Doug never called me, but sent me texts like, "Having a good time? Don't worry about my mom." I was amazed by his foolishness. His mom was with me, yet he thought his life was still intact. My feelings for him quickly evaporated. He was not only dishonest, but was a total moron. Stacy agreed with my plan to punish him severely. She and I took an earlier flight back home and waited for Doug's return. He came back a little before I was originally scheduled to be back. He was taken aback by the sight of me. "Oh my God, you're already back!" Yes. He brought in a sweet scent of perfume with him. He must have planned to shower before I came back. I pretended not to notice and asked him nonchalantly, "I'm sorry for leaving you behind. How did it go with you?" "Oh no worries. I told you to go. Did you enjoy it?" "Yes, very much. I got you a souvenir. And your mom?" "She's out of critical condition, thankfully." "That's great. I would like to visit her." "It's all good. Don't make a big deal for her." It was impossible not to make a big deal out of a family member being rushed to the emergency room. I thought he was crazy. "Listen, Doug, What you're saying is weird. Why? Because Stacy was very ill, wasn't she? Why can't I go and visit her then? Ugh, you're overreacting. I'm telling you to drop it. Drop it? How? You're nuts. You went on a trip regardless. That doesn't sound considerate, does it? End of the story. Then I coyly gave in a multiple choice question. Here's a quiz for you. I did go on a trip, but who on earth did I go with? 1. A friend. 2. My husband. 3. Your mom. Which is your answer? What the hell? He backed away so far that he was against the wall. As he was cornered, I showed him pictures from the trip. A picture of Stacy and I in the same pose as the Statue of Liberty. Stacy biting into a big slice of New York-style pizza, and me eating Mr. Sophie's soft ice cream cone in Central Park. There were dozens of other photos. You are kidding? Of course not. She was with me. Now, here's another quiz. It wasn't your mom you've been with. So, who was it? It wasn't my mom, but my aunt. You are a freaking moron, aren't you? If you're going to lie, come up with something better. It was astounded when the bedroom door opened. I can't listen to you guys anymore. Doug, where have you gone? What the... Mom? Oh no, you aren't supposed to come out yet. Sorry, but I can't stand it anymore. Shame on you, Doug. Come over here and sit. Stacy jumped out, looking furious. She had him sit in a chair and stood beside him in rage. Where have you been the past 5 days? Where's your motive to making your aunt and me sick? He flustered, looking pale as a ghost. Explain, and don't you dare lie to me. He was like a lobster on the kitchen counter. His fate was to be cooked by his mom and me, although he didn't look so tasty. To sum up his story, which he explained in agitation, he was indeed cheating on me. It was a fling in the beginning. He and I had been dating since high school, so he didn't know any other women. He thought it was a shame, so he came up with the idea of playing the field in his remaining days of bachelorhood. His motive for cheating was too ridiculous that it infuriated me more. If he had just gone to a strip club, I could have turned a blind eye, but he chose adultery. And the adulteress was his co-worker, whom we had invited to our wedding. They both had such thick skin. The reason he kept canceling our pre-wedding meetings was to hang out with her. When the ceremony was done, so was the fling, he thought. He made a chance to be alone with her during the reception, and told her it was over for them. However, she had fallen for me and resisted breaking up. She used threats like, I would tell everyone at work about us when you're away on a honeymoon trip. Don't go if you don't want me to do that. I'm not going to break up with you. Their discussion was tangled up until the day of our honeymoon. The reason he suddenly canceled the trip was to calm his adulteress from going out of control. But I already knew his story contradicted the truth. He didn't decide to cancel on the day, but had already decided way before. When Stacy called me, I found out his lie. When I had checked on my tablet that day was his credit card statement, which showed a record of Amtrak and hotel name. The destination was New Orleans. It was one of the potential honeymoon spots for us. The payment was made 2 weeks ago, and there was no sign of cancellation. taking all that into that account, it meant that he originally planned to cancel his honeymoon and go to New Orleans with his adulteress. I also checked the cheerful music playing behind his rubbish call on social media. The familiar music was coming from the fountain in the Amtrak station. When he made that call to me, his trip with his adulteress had already started. How ludicrous of him. If he had planned it for so long, he should have been more methodical with his deceit. It was really pathetic. When I exposed his lie, to my surprise, he started crying. I was the one who should have been crying, and not him who created the fiasco. He had already lied when he swore at the wedding that he would only love me for the rest of his life. He lied about his mom being rushed to the emergency room, and again lied about the sudden cancellation of our honeymoon. How could I trust him after all these lies? He may have been seeing other women when he cancelled our plans before this. 10 years of our relationship had completely fallen apart, and I couldn't return to it. I want a divorce. Wait a moment, honey. I'm really sorry. Let's start over. We've only been married less than a month. You've got to let this minor mistake go. A minor mistake? Don't you be the judge. He's an idiot, Kat. I apologize on his behalf. You are so insensitive to what you've actually done to her. You won't be able to regain her trust for the rest of your life. Reflect on that, you loser. She fiercely scolded him. After 10 years of dating and 1 month of marriage, he was abandoned by his wife and his mom. He wailed shamelessly in despair. Doug and I divorced in the end. There was not a shred of affection or love left in me after 10 years together. All I had was dismay and coldness. He resisted the divorce for a long time, but he eventually gave up and signed the papers in tears. People around me were stunned to hear about the quick end of my marriage, but when I explained the audio, they sympathized with me. I returned the gifts and money I received from them. It was easy for me to do because of the alimony from Doug. My coworker says she will set up blind dates for me soon. She tells me to forget about marriage for a while and play the field. I agree with her, and I'm looking forward to fun encounters. Doug, too, announced his divorce and was surprised, but he couldn't get into the detail. In his case, how could he declare that it was due to his adultery? And the adulteress was in the same office. Anyway, it spread from my side, and almost everyone in his office knew about it. He's frowned upon by colleagues as a guy who cancelled his honeymoon for a trip with his adulteress. I would think no company can entrust an important job to such an idiot in the future. He made his bed. Now he has to sleep in it. As for the adulteress, she broke up with him. Apparently, she was a maid poacher. She lost interest in Doug after we separated. She's a villain of all women. I've been scheming to get back at her with the evidence I have. Stacy has been source of all that information. Since I no longer have any relationship with Doug, it's weird to keep calling her mom, but it's also weird for me to call her by her name all of the sudden. I contemplate how to address her in meanwhile. I still call her mom. She couldn't believe Doug's adultery at first and was greatly shocked when she found out. She was consistently on my side after that. When I demanded alimony from him, she even pressured him for me. I wondered why she was so cooperative regardless of our 10-year relationship. I would think that she would try to protect her own son. So I asked her one day, Her eyes stare into the distance while she explains to me. To be honest, I've been cheated before. Oh no, by your husband? Yes, I found out half a year after we got married. Seeing her always cheerful, I never imagined she went through such a terrible thing. But when I was a newlywed, the position of women was still weak in society. When I cried to my mother-in-law, she snapped at me, saying it was a wife's duty to turn a blind eye. My husband also said that it was a man's way of stress relief. I just couldn't conceive myself. The mistrust I developed then has never left me. I'm sorry. So, I had to try a little harder as a consolation to the old me. She looks at me and smiles mischievously. Never mind me, but your life is just beginning. I'm glad that you become my daughter-in-law, even if it was only for a short time. Thank you for inviting me on the trip too. I was so happy that I could choose my own chocolates. I templated for a bit and then asked her, well, if you don't mind, can we continue to be good friends? Not as my mother-in-law, but as a real friend. I would love to, but won't it be too painful for you? You would be reminded of Doc, wouldn't you? Not at all. You've been so kind to me, so I'm much better now. Are you sure? Sure. I'm really over him and the whole ordeal now. She contemplates a bit and then says, well, I'm happy to be your friend. Will you take a trip with me again? Of course. She gives me a giddy smile. Doc and I parted in a messy way, but I still adore her. We get along so well. I'm going to secretly practice calling her by name by the next time I see her.